З боку влади, я вважаю, це недостатнє бажання співпрацювати з громадськістю і недостатнє розуміння важливості і ролі громадянського суспільства. З боку громадянського суспільства, я вважаю, це все-таки недостатній професіоналізм, недостатня компетентність громадських організацій в тих питаннях, які вони повинні вирішувати, чи ними займаються. І все-таки недостатня активність громадськості. Я вважаю, що незважаючи на те, що громадських організацій достатньо багато, сьогодні була названа цифра 79 тисяч громадських організацій, працювати громадянам треба більш активно, більш зацікавлено і розуміти, що якщо вони самі не будуть активними на захисті своїх прав і інтересів, за них це ніхто не зробить.
Три бар'єри. Мабуть, це те, що звучало, що саме громадянське суспільство не розуміє, що воно є громадянське суспільство, і що кожен з нас є громадянським. Вони не знають ролі і завдань, да? І з іншої сторони, вони не вірять, мабуть, свої сили. Це головний бар'єр.
Дякую. А що потрібно зробити найголовніше, щоб якось активізувати?
Я не знаю, що треба зробити. Це, мабуть, кожен повинен змінити відношення до свого життя сам і до того, що він представляє, що він робить в цьому житті. І, мабуть, це, скоріше всього, допоможе. Не бути просто пасивним, просто, скажімо, як сказала Ліна Костенко, не маємо права на поразку. От, скажімо, щоб кожен з нас собі сказав, що ми не маємо права на поразку, на песимізм, як сказав зовсім недавно Попович. От, скажімо, дуже прості елементарні речі.
А як ви оцінюєте співпрацю організацій громадянського суспільства з владою безпосередньо?
Ви знаєте, коли це професійно, конструктивно і націлено на отримання конкретного, можливо, зовсім невеличкого результату, тоді це дуже добре. А коли приходиш і приходиш, не знаєш до кого, просиш, не знаєш що, і чекаєш, і тим іще не розуміючи що, тоді нічого не буде. Тому треба отак.
Громадянського суспільства? Ну, мабуть, перше, це невміння громадських організацій об'єднуватися у досягненні своїх цілей. Друге питання – це налаштованість як влади, так і громадянського суспільства, точніше не налаштованість, а недовіра між громадянським суспільством і органами влади, а також все ж таки хотіла зупинитися на питаннях професіоналізму, як з боку представників органів влади, так і представників громадськості.
Okay, firstly, I want to ask you about what is your role in this project and what the main activities you did here.
I was conducting an expert study and desk research on the European examples of how policy towards the NGOs is monitored on various monitoring mechanisms and also various players. If it's done by state players or independent organizations like NGOs. So it was a kind of collection of best practices and also collection of bad practices that exist. And then I had to give some recommendations in cooperation with the UNDP and Cabinet of Ministers on what would be the method or what should be the methods applied in Ukraine.
And could you tell some short summary about the results of this study? What you found?
Yeah. Like obviously every country is struggling a bit with monitoring the effects of the state policy, and there are various reasons for that. There are political reasons, that there is this kind of like the electoral system and every 4-year elections and every 4-year or X number of years changes of the government and changes of people who are dealing with the NGO sector can influence or may influence the continuity of the work, because measuring impact is never short term, and measuring kind of long-term impact on certain policies, and we are talking, for example, policies to develop sector, meaning funds for the NGOs, yes, like how they can develop, what they can use for their development, and how these funds or these funding schemes are influencing in reality the NGO sector. That's always questionable. And if there are no good assessment criteria set at the beginning, then it's very hard to measure the results at the end. I'm just telling you an example. Often like in the NGO society, people are quoting the Hungarian 1% tax law as a good example to finance the NGOs. And at the end, if you just look at the figures, how much financial profit it brings to the NGOs, actually it's not that big as, for example, donations from individuals, even if there are no tax incentives. So you fight for a policy or a legal framework change, you have this law, and at the end it doesn't increase significantly the income for the sector. But on the other side, what they were not expecting, it was increasing the public image of the sector, because as it was a very competitive period, or as it is a very competitive period every year in the spring when the tax forms are filled, then NGOs are made to communicate about their activities, about their achievements. So it was a good attempt to inform the public, but it was not as good attempt to get the NGOs funded better, which was the original intention.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think? What is the main barrier in communication between authorities and CSOs in Ukraine? Maybe you found this because this conference is
much more about the communication. Yes. In general, I think that. As I said also in the panel discussion, that it's much more about the learning than the willingness. So I'm not sure how many prejudices NGOs have towards the government and how many prejudices governments have towards the NGOs. But I just hope, and I see it over the last couple of years since we have been working with GURT, with OSCE, with UNDP now, that this openness is inevitable. Like it's there. You can recognize it. But on the other side, how much it's becoming materialized, it's always a big question. So, like, I think the biggest issue is to be patient and to not to look at a new policy or a new law or a new mechanism as something that is final. Like, it has to be immediately, even at the beginning, agreed that it will be revisited in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and at the beginning there should be kind of agreed points, reference points or benchmarks, how you will look at the results. And I think if this thing will happen, then there will be more willingness to cooperate, because there will be clear evidences and there will be also guarantees. So I think learning and maybe in the past lack of willingness to learn and more looking for ready-made solutions, it was more of a problem. And I think if this whole attitude is changing for this kind of testing together, then it might have a good result. And maybe one more point I just wanted to say, because that was coming from both of the researches I have done in the last bit more than 1 year, that for Ukraine, one way of communication, one way of cooperation between NGOs and the government, municipalities and the government, it's never enough. One way of funding is never enough. It has to be always a complex system, because what can help 10% of NGOs, it will not help the remaining 90%. So there is no universal tool, there is no universal mechanism that would ensure, for example, that everybody's opinion is heard, everybody's opinion is kind of taken into account. So there should be a kind of complexity of mechanisms that are not competing with each other, but they are supporting each other.
Okay, thank you. With GURT, you worked on
like we had joint projects, projects
leadership.
Yeah, leadership and NGO management, and also with Bogdan, we were members of the board, East European, I don't even remember the name, working group on governance in Eastern Europe.
And so it was something like online toolkit? Or
yeah, there was an online toolkit. Yeah, there were various projects and various elements of that project.
So it was finally the developed toolkit.
Yes, it was a toolkit partly finalized, partly not finalized.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.